This is Self-Reflection with Nekesa. Glad that you've tuned in today. We will do a recap of last week's episode on false self-concept and coming to the realization of your negative coping mechanisms and patterns. Remember, I spoke to you about how to learn to evaluate your emotions and be realistic. You will have to use self-awareness as a tool. When you're taking self-awareness as a tool, after knowing what your blind self is, your negative traits, your weaknesses, your negative coping mechanisms, then you have to learn to come up with a plan on how to handle this. There's this person I was talking to, and they just told me how negative coping mechanisms almost destroyed their marriage. And this person was explaining to me, and they told me that for a long time, they never handled their issues with their wives. Every time he did something wrong, he could walk away. He was always on flight mode. When the wife brings up a discussion on the matter, he'll either pretend that he's going to the bathroom or he will walk away. And this went on for a long time. What seemed like a normal, just a small thing, became a habit, and the wife realized this is the way the husband is. And it went on year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. One day the man came from work and he found the wife had packed her belongings, and instead of him being on flight mode, the wife had now fled. It was the opposite. And you know what? The wife was not fleeing because this man did a big thing, beat her up, or did ABCD. The man could meet all his responsibilities, his needs, but he was struggling with avoidance. He never discussed anything with the wife. Issues that could be handled, small things that could be talked over 30 minutes, they were piling and accumulating, and this was frustrating the wife. So you see, that is a negative coping mechanism, and it is informed by a wrong thinking pattern. And doing a little bit of just counseling and finding out, I found out the man's background. He grew up with a single mother, and I just thought, and after listening to him a bit, I realized that his childhood, his growing up, had really affected the way he views women. His thoughts about women, they were negative. But with counseling and with therapy, the man began to change the way he thought, and he began to communicate with his wife, and right now they are together and happily married. And you see, even going back, this being happily married, it's not just a fairy tale. He had to work towards it. He had to now go back and begin to undo what had formed in the wife, because there was no communication. He had now to begin to undo the pain, the misery, the mistrust that he had caused the wife. Because when you have negative coping patterns, then negative challenges or problems begin to spring up. Another example of a negative coping mechanism could be with food. Some people, when they are angry, they self-destruct. There's something called bulimia. They will eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And you see, in the process, they begin to gain weight. Their faces break up. You see, they are internalizing their pain instead of confronting the issue. You remember we spoke about negative patterns. You could look like a person who is very forgiving. People can look at you and say, so-and-so is forgiving. Even when you do this to her, or him. He does not show his emotions. He says, I've forgiven you. He smiles. But this person could be struggling with this kind of things, depression, bulimia. So as you come up with a plan, part of how to deal with the negative self-concept, you begin to look at such issues and how to work on them. And this could include journaling, coming up with goals, or it could also include visiting a counselor or a therapist, and they can help you work out, come up with goals of which will help you to achieve a positive or a true self-image. Something I've also noticed, and I really want to emphasize here when it comes to spirituality. Some people hide behind the mask of religion and spirituality, which can also be a defense mechanism or a coping mechanism. So instead of facing an issue, have you ever heard people every time they tell you they are praying, you want to talk about issues? Even as I'm doing this program, there are some people who think that what I'm doing is not right, but we need to understand that we cannot remove the emotions and the mind and separate them from spirituality, because God is the one who created our cognitive, the way we think, our mind. God created us with a mind, and there's a reason. God is the one who created us and gave us feelings. So this thing of hiding behind spirituality and not being able to address the issues and the challenges that you're facing, the mental challenges, the emotional challenges, and hiding behind spirituality is also a negative way of coping with things. And that's why some people go to church, because they're having a terrible marriage and all the time they're in church, or they're in wherever they are. Maybe it's a mosque, or they decide to go to a temple. It's not because they want to have a relationship with God or because they are spiritual, but it is because they are using this as a mask, as a defense mechanism to cover for the pain or that they are feeling, or to cover for the relationship. So you'll find them in church, all they are doing is praying. They are active in every women group. If they are men, they are active in the men groups and ABCD, but they have deep issues at home, in their marriages, in their family. So you realize in the morning they wake up, either they go to work, then they go to church. In the evening, they're also attending church again. There's no communication with their families. Even when their pastors or their spiritual leader wants to talk to them, they don't want to have a conversation. And some of the mistakes some of these leaders make too is just emphasizing on the place of prayer and refusing to address some of these issues. I would advise or recommend that even spiritual leaders, you need people who can be able to talk to your people and help them to come up with plans to face some of these issues, these negative coping mechanisms, so that the church or the spiritual places of worship, or even the pastors and the leaders, are not just going to be used as ways of coping up. You see, those people who have such negative coping mechanisms also tend to have negative defense mechanisms. That's when things happen, they shift blame to the church, they shift blame, they scapegoat, they blame the pastor, they blame the fellowship, they blame everyone, because such people have not yet healed emotionally, and they have not learned to articulate their issues and to accept their issues and their flaws and their weaknesses, and to go about them. Another way of avoiding this negative thought pattern is try and not be self-righteous. You know, there are people who believe that they are the ones, they are holier than thou. You know, when you sit with people who are drinking, I don't drink. Yeah, even if you don't drink, You don't have to be sitting around those who are drinking and beginning to talk about, I don't drink. Remember we said when we are dealing with people who have a false self-concept, they tend to be very conditional. You see, you'll find them. I remember there's a wedding we went with some people, yeah? And people were busy dancing, and they would just sit on the seat. And the way they would look at the people dancing, they were looking at them like, these people are immoral, they are sinners, why are they dancing? This was a wedding. And even when the songs that they thought were spiritual were dancing, you could see the way they just nod their head and they feel that, yes, they are the ones. That is self-righteousness, and it doesn't make you right. You see, so avoid self-righteousness and taking yourself too serious. Many people have missed out on that. You see, the way you behave, the way you respond and react to emotions doesn't necessarily mean that you're right. When people are dancing and enjoying a wedding, someone is wedding. Remember, even Jesus went at the wedding of Cana. He changed the water into wine. Probably was not even drinking the wine, but he understood the occasion. People were celebrating. He didn't begin to say, I don't take wine. Why are you bringing me water to change? He went with the people. He was in touch with the people. He understood the occasion. So sometimes when you struggle with a false self-concept, your feelings are not necessarily right. That's something that you need to realize. And even if your feelings are right, it is not bad to feel angry, but that does not inform who you are. The fact that I feel angry with a situation now does not mean I am an angry person. So don't take yourself too serious. Don't center your thinking patterns over what you're feeling now. Let not that be your way of thinking. Another way is to not overestimate your opinion. This sounds very interesting, yeah? You go to places. There are some people who are highly opinionated. They believe that what they say is final, and it's like their opinion is what matters. It is always decent to use phrases such as, I could be wrong in this, but when you're giving an opinion, even if you are an authority, that shows that you're willing to learn. You present yourself as one who is open to learn and open to reality. There's something we talk in psychology, it's called tabula rasa. Nobody is born as an empty. Okay, some people say that you are born as an empty slate, and then they begin to write. As you grow up, you begin to write on this slate. So there's no adult who is a tabula rasa. There's no adult who is a blank slate. So you cannot sit with adults, whether they are illiterate, semi-illiterate, and you begin to think like they have nothing to offer. Everybody has something to offer. Never ever feel like your opinions are the ones that matter. You see, like when you're discussing with people, and maybe we are talking about child development, even if you are an authority in that, maybe you have a doctorate, a PhD. Remember somebody who has 12 children and they have reared them and they are grown-up adults. They have something to talk about child development. They may not have a PhD. They may not have sat in a formal class and obtained papers like you. It is always good to be open to the reality that they are also parents and they have nurtured children. So when speaking in areas of child development, child discipline, you can say, I may not be sure, but I don't know. I feel like when we are disciplining children, it is proper to do this and this. But you don't come there and present yourself like you're the final authority in child discipline. You are the final authority in matters marriage. Remember, couples are different and they're unique. Families are different. Children are different. I hope that today this has been a challenging topic. Check yourself out. What are your coping mechanisms? What are your defense mechanisms? What is your thinking patterns? Where do you think challenges have presented themselves in terms of the way you think, the way you relate to people, the way you cope with situations and express your emotions in life? Take a piece of paper and that will be your homework for the week. Until then, see you and God bless.